So I'm going to be sharing my answers about what it was like when I was in the 4th grade. Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. My name is Mariely Sanchez and I'm a 4th grade teacher in South Florida. So for today's video, I have a special tag that was created by Valeria, the Spanglish maestra, and it's all about when we were in the grade that we currently teach. So I'm going to be sharing my answers to 6 or 7 questions about what it was like when I was in the 4th grade, since that's the grade that I currently teach. Now, if you see me looking down at my iPad, I'm just looking at the questions so that I can address them throughout the video. And I just have to say that for this video, we had to kind of search for old family photos or old photos of us, trying to search for a photo when we were in that grade level. And actually, when I was in 4th grade, I was still living in Puerto Rico. It was actually the last year that I lived in Puerto Rico before my family decided to move to Miami, Florida. So I don't think I found an exact photo of when I was in 4th grade. I mean, when I started looking for photos, I found this one. This is what I looked like when I was in kindergarten. So that's me with 2 little pigtails. And some of my friends say my face hasn't changed that much, but that's me. And that really is not a 4th grade picture, but it was adorable. I mean, this is such an adorable picture. But I started kind of looking around and I did find a couple of pictures that I believe were either when I was in 4th grade or around the time when I was in 4th grade. Here's a picture of myself with my brother and my dad. This was in our house in Puerto Rico. Here is another picture of myself and my younger brother, Danny, in a rocking chair in my old house in Puerto Rico. And I also have a couple other pictures that I found that were kind of interesting, especially this one. So this one for sure, the second one that I'm going to show you, because first I'm going to show you one when I was 3 years old. It was actually my 3-year-old birthday party. And then I'm going to compare it to when I turned 10 years old, which was at the end of 4th grade in Puerto Rico. So here is my picture of my 3-year-old birthday. How adorable. It's like I'm giving a speech or something. This is my cousin, brother, cousin. So this was taken at my grandparents' house, my dad's parents. And this is taken also in the same house, but 7 years later. So that's me right there. And I have my brother, cousin, uncle, and a couple of other cousins and so forth. But yeah, I thought that was really cool. I love looking at all of these family photos. And I do have a couple of others that are not when I was in 4th grade. I do have this one, which was, I believe, my 7th birthday party. Check out my hat and check out the Cabbage Patch Kids. I loved Cabbage Patch. And this is the same day. All my friends from the neighborhood and my brothers were there. So how cool is that? And this is another one of me and my brothers at home on my parents' bed, because we would just love bouncing around in our parents' bed. And then when we finally moved to Miami, this is a picture that my family took as a family portrait, our first family portrait when we were here in Miami. The church that we attended hired a photographer and they took family photos of all the families from the church. And this was our family portrait. So that is me right there next to my mom, my brother Danny, my brother Harith, and my dad. So that is a little trip down memory lane of my old family photos and what I possibly looked like when I was in 4th grade. So I'm thinking more like this and this at the end of 4th grade and this. So just so you can kind of have an idea of what I was like when I was in 4th grade. And now we're going to get into the questions. So I'm going to try my best to remember, because it's been a long time since I've been in 4th grade and we didn't have yearbooks. I think we probably took student photos, but because obviously this one was taken at the same school when I was in kindergarten. But I don't know if my parents actually purchased pictures when I was in 4th grade. But I'm gonna try my best to try to remember what it was like when I was in 4th grade, and we're gonna go down memory lane. So let's do this. Question number 1 says, describe your 4th grade classroom. What do you remember? Now, this is interesting because in 4th grade at my school in Puerto Rico, that's when students started transitioning from class to class. So we didn't just have one teacher in 4th grade, we had multiple teachers, each teacher teaching a different subject. So I had a teacher for math, for science, for social studies, for English, which is learning to speak English. We had a reading class that included writing. I believe we had some other classes too, because I do remember going to physical education, and I don't remember what the other classes may have been, but we did switch from class to class. And I remember our classrooms were pretty plain. I mean, not as highly decorated as they are now. We didn't have air conditioning, I believe. It was mostly a huge school for sure. I believe it went from kindergarten to 12th grade, or maybe till middle school most likely. And I think middle school, because I think the high school was in the middle of the city, and the school where I went to was in the mountain. So I remember my dad or my mom, when they dropped us off to school, they had to go out of our neighborhood and go up the mountain and drop us off at the school. And it was right next to a slope of a mountain. So there were some classrooms that we were facing, the windows were facing the mountain, so we could see the trees and all the plants that were sloping up the mountains and things like that. So that is something I remember. The windows looked like shutter windows that had the white panels, and you had to crank up, open the windows. And the doors, they mostly left them open, obviously for the air to circulate. And the windows were open. You could literally stick your hand out the window and it's outside. They had traditional desks, traditional chairs. They had chalkboards. What else do I remember from my classrooms? I believe part of the school went up to the 3rd floor. A lot of the school was like outdoors, so we had a big courtyard in the center of the school. We had like a gazebo at the entrance of the school where kids sat around and just hung out. We had a big outdoor basketball court with bleachers. And basically, I do remember just being outdoors. Every time you had to move from classroom to classroom, you had to go outside, and the hallways were outdoors. So yeah, I do remember that, walking up the stairs, walking down the stairs to go to classes, depending on what period I was going to, because in 4th grade, like I said, we switched classes, so that was pretty interesting. We did have a library, and I loved spending time in there as well. We had a huge cafeteria, and those are the little things that I remember. I mean, I don't remember any particular things on the walls in the classroom. Like I said, just traditional. The teacher had their desk. There were student desks. I believe we were pretty much in rows. So that's what I remember as far as my classroom goes and my school overall. One more thing. So the school also was next to this little corner store, and the corner store belonged to a family that lived to a house that was connected to it, and they sold empanadas and other treats and candy and little toys. And I do remember that. And we had breaks where we can actually walk to the corner store because it was like right there adjacent to the school. So I'll talk a little bit more about that in the next questions that are coming up, because that was very interesting. So question number 2, describe your 4th grade teacher. Well, in this case, it's teachers, because I had more than one. For the most part, I do remember my teachers being very welcoming and supportive and making me feel like I could do anything. And they were also very understanding, because I have asthma. I've had asthma since I was a year old, but at that time I had it so severely I had to be hospitalized almost every month. So I did miss school from time to time, but my teachers will allow me to make up the work or the assessments and help me out in any way that I needed the help in. I do remember one particular teacher that I had. Now, he wasn't all that bad, and it's someone that we respected, but it was my English teacher. There was one particular class period that I guess one of my neighbors was asking me something related to what we were doing. I'm not sure what it was, but I was talking, and out of nowhere, he came from behind me. He was going up and down the rows apparently. He came from behind me and hit me with the ruler on the back of my calf, on my leg. And that shocked me, and it was super painful. So as you can see, this was a time when those things were allowed, corporal punishment. And not to say it's not my fondest memory. I do not like that at all. I always remember that as, yeah, my teacher hit me. Not a good memory to have, especially since I wasn't really given a warning, and I thought I was trying to help a fellow classmate, but I was talking and I got hit by a ruler. So that's something that I remember from my teachers, but most of them were very friendly and positive, and I do remember that. On to question number 3, something you remember learning that year. Obviously, I do remember learning English because it was the first year that we were to speak only English during English class. In 3rd grade, we had English class, but we weren't expected to always talk in English. And in 4th grade, our English teacher actually wanted us to speak English during the class. So I was trying to learn English. Now that I learn it completely, no, you'll see, because I'm going to tell you a little story that happened a little bit later with one of my friends. But that's something that I do remember being different that year in 4th grade. Also, I was very proud of knowing my multiplication tables. I kept repeating them over and over and just being so happy that I knew my multiplication tables. That's something that I really do remember. In science, there was one lesson where we were learning about the different types of soil, and there was a project where we had to actually gather soil samples from around our neighborhood. And I remember my mom helped me with this project by creating like a display board, and she had little plastic bags, and we collected samples of clay, sand, different kinds of soils that were in the area, and we taped the little bags on the display board and labeled each type of soil. So that was really interesting. Question number 4, something interesting or memorable about that year. Definitely the time my English teacher hit me with that ruler. That's memorable. I still remember it to this day. And the other thing that was memorable was that soil project in science. This is definitely something really cool. I never did anything like that here in Florida, but I really thought that was super cool. The other thing that I just remembered was that in social studies, we were learning about all the different landmarks in Puerto Rico and the different kinds of islands in the Caribbean. So that was something that has stuck with me too. Learning the geography, how we kind of section off the island, and then how we call the neighboring islands in the Caribbean. So that was really interesting. Another thing that was memorable was actually switching classes, because from kindergarten through 3rd grade, we only had one teacher, but come 4th grade, we felt like we were kind of like old enough to be on our own, because this is another thing that was interesting about being in 4th grade in Puerto Rico. We were switching class to class, but the teachers were not escorting us from one class to the next. We just heard the bell, the teacher dismissed us, the teacher stayed in the class, and we just walked to our next class. It wasn't very far. It was either maybe in the floor below or the floor above, but it was in the same building. That's where they kept the 4th graders. And I believe the 5th graders were in the same building too, but we were on our own. And if it was lunchtime, we left and walked ourselves to lunch. And the lunch line had a line for girls and a line for boys. And when we went inside, we had actual metal trays, and it was home cooked meals. I mean, the food was delicious. We got a real plastic cup that we just filled it with the kind of milk that we want: oat milk, regular milk, chocolate milk, or water if you wanted to. We also had metal utensils. I mean, lunch in Puerto Rico that I remember, I don't know how it is now, but back then it was amazing. And we had a long time for lunch as well, from what I can remember, because we had enough time to be in the line. And yeah, while we were in line, we played a lot of like hand games, like all these things with my friends. But we had enough time to be in line, get our food, eat our food, and then we could play around and just listen for the bell, because once we heard that first bell, we needed to start heading over to our next class by the time the next bell rang. So we always kept in mind the bell system. And also, since we had that extra time during lunchtime, that's the time when we were able to go to the corner store to go ahead and buy maybe some empanadas or some candy, and enjoy it. So my mom would give me $1 or $2 every other day or maybe once a week so that I can go to the little corner store and get me something that I wanted to eat from there. So I do remember those. Those are some memorable experiences that I've had there. And it's definitely different from what I experienced the following year when I was a 5th grader in Florida. All right, on to the next question. Question number 5. Do you remember who your friends were? I actually remember having one really good friend. Her name was Diana. We were like inseparable. We were always together. She would tell me stories about things that she had experienced and gone through because she did live in New York for a bit. And then her family moved back to Puerto Rico. And we would talk about different things like that. And one day she actually scared me. It was actually during science class. We were sitting in the classroom. I guess it was like towards the end of the year because we were not doing much. We were just sitting there and talking. And remember how I told you that the windows faced the side, the sloping side of the mountain, and through there you kind of saw a shack and the trees and all that stuff. But she was telling a very scary story, and then all of a sudden she's like, and that machete came out of nowhere, and then she pointed and there was a machete on a stump that we hadn't even noticed before. So we were like all freaked out because she was talking about some really scary things. I do remember that. I also had another classmate in that same class named David, and he had recently come from the United States with his family. I guess he was living here for a while, and he said that he spoke English, and I'm like, I wanted to see if he really did speak English. Even though I didn't know how to speak English, I asked him, well, really, if you speak English, how do you say cabello, which is hair in Spanish? And he said hair, and I didn't know it was hair. I'm like, no, it's not. I didn't know anything, people. I was just this 4th grader, and I just, questioning my friends, and I didn't even know anything. And those are the 2 memories that I have of friends or classmates that I had in 4th grade. All right, question number 6. As an educator now, do you do anything similar to your 4th grade teachers? I definitely do not hit my students with rulers. That's a big no-no, and even if it was allowed, I would not do that. I just didn't like that memory at all. But other than that, I am friendly. I am positive with my students, just like my 4th grade teachers were. And I make sure that my students know that I'm there for them and I support them and that they're worthy and they're loved. So that is something that I carry with me even today. All right, and then question number 7 says, anything else you like to say? So in my school in Puerto Rico, from kindergarten through whatever grade it ended, everybody had mandatory uniforms. You had a specific kind of color that you had to wear, and I believe it was plaid with light blue, navy blue, and white. And all the students every day had to wear uniforms, which was a big culture shock when I came to live here in Florida, because at the time, now there's schools that require uniforms, but at the time, everybody just wore regular clothes. There were no uniforms. So I was not used to just wearing regular clothes to go to school. Also, the lunches in the cafeteria in Florida were not the same as my lunches in Puerto Rico. That took a lot of getting used to. And that is part of another story, which is like my 5th grade story of when I transitioned from Puerto Rico to Florida, and how I then continued to try to get used to the new culture and learn the language. Because even though I did have English in 4th grade, I didn't really learn English. I mean, I learned English from a little song that we will sing sometimes, like pollito, chicken, gallina, hen, lápiz, pencil, y pluma, pen. It keeps going, but that's part of the song that we would like sing and repeat during English. So that's the extent of my English at the end of 4th grade into 5th grade. But at the end of 5th grade, I did learn conversational English, and I was able to communicate in English. So yeah, that's a story for another time. But something else that I wanted to mention about my 4th grade year, there's something that I love to do from time to time. So remember how I told you we had outdoor basketball courts with the bleachers? So I would go to the top of the bleacher, which wasn't super high, but for me it was a little bit high. I would go to the top of the bleacher and jump down to the grass below. That's something I like to do for fun. Yeah, I lived dangerously, I guess, when I was in 4th grade. And another thing is the fact that my mom gave me the money to eat at the corner store by the school, and the school actually let us go because, like I said, it was right there in the corner, right across the street, and we were able to just stay in that area. Some of the students lived much closer to the school, so they will go there and eat lunch and then come back to school. So very interesting how open they were. I wonder if they still do that, but that's how it was when I was in 4th grade. And the last thing was that 4th grade was the last grade that I attended when I lived in Puerto Rico, because like I said, that summer my parents decided to make that transition, and then in August of that year the whole family flew to Florida and we started the transition to live here. And then at the end of August I started 5th grade. So that is my little tag on what it was like when I was in 4th grade, or when I was in 4th grade. And I hope you enjoyed learning a little bit more about me, and I hope that you'll be able to check out everyone else's video in this tag. Valeria did a really good job of trying to find different teachers from grades 1 through 12. High school teachers are included here. So if you want to hear from these YouTubers that you may or may not know and their experience being in the grade that they currently teach, you should definitely check out their videos, which I will link down below along with the playlist that Valeria created. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to hit the like button, leave a comment down below, let me know what you thought or any questions you may have. Also, if you haven't subscribed, please consider subscribing and hitting the bell for notifications so you don't miss any future videos. I hope you have a beautiful, magical day, and don't forget to smile. Hello dreamers, wishers, and magical thinkers. Thank you so much for making it to the very end of this video and for showing your support. If you'd like to subscribe, you can do so by clicking on my picture down here. You can also check out my latest videos here and here. Don't forget to believe in the magic that's inside you, because you are capable of great things. See you next time.